You too. Knut Svanholm. How do you say your name in English? Knut Svanholm?
Yeah, Knut Svanholm.
Yeah. Pretty Swedish name, huh?
Yeah, pretty Swedish name. It even sounds Danish or Norwegian. Maybe.
Yeah. Knut, wasn't that some old king? So?
Yeah. Old Norwegian king, I believe, right? King Knut. They English speakers tend to pronounce my name Knut, which is fine with me.
Okay,
I'm a canoe.
So Knut, welcome to the Strategic Tech Coaching Podcast. And first, just short, I start with this question. I've been living in Dubai for many years. So you and me, we are in a building in Dubai, and we're going up to Sky Bar. There's a third guy in the lift, and he asks, "So Knut, what do you do? What would you tell him?"
Oh, that's I've been asking myself that question for all my life. And I'm trying to come up with a coherent answer, but I seem to be doing different things during different stages of my life all the time. So right now I'm working as a crew manager for an offshore shipping company in Gothenburg who operates around 45 crew transfer vessels for sending out technicians to wind farms in the North Sea and in the Baltic and so. But I recently quit that job, and I'm doing my last couple of months here. And then in August, I'm taking a plane to Mexico, where I'm speaking at a Bitcoin conference. And then when I return to Sweden, I have no house to return to because we found a couple of tenants there to rent out the house to. So I'm taking my car down to Spain to a house we bought like 4 years ago there. Okay. And we're going to live there for at least a year now. So I'm taking the family to Spain, quit my job, and I'm going to pursue my secondary career, which is my Bitcoin career or Bitcoin writing career or author career or whatever you may call it.
How many books on Bitcoin have you written now?
I've written 3, but only 2 proper ones, I would say. The first one is just a collection of articles I wrote in 2017. But these are the 2 books. The first one is called Bitcoin Sovereignty Through Mathematics, and the other one is called Bitcoin Independence Reimagined. I'm working on a third one. Working title is Bitcoin Everything Divided by 21 Million.
Excellent. Yeah.
When I'll be finished with that one, but right now I'm having a hard time finding the time to write. Let me just switch connection here. Is that better?
Yep. No, it seems to be
so.
better.
Yep.
So I since a couple of years I've been following the Bitcoin community a little bit, and Knut, you're quite famous in the Bitcoin community, I believe, with your books, and also you've been on a lot of podcasts about Bitcoin. And this is not a Bitcoin podcast. I mean, the mission of this podcast is to inspire and educate leaders and entrepreneurs in a world that is changing really fast. And a part of that mission, I want to educate about new technologies and new things that are coming. So I have experts like you on this. So this episode is about Bitcoin. And but before there was Bitcoin, there was maybe share your background, Knut. How did you get into these topics, and what did you think was the solution before Bitcoin, or the history?
Well, I come from sort of a different angle than most people in this space, because I don't really have a computer background. I don't really have a financial background. I don't really have, well, I sort of do, but not in a proper sense. I studied like, what's it called? Naturvetenskapliga programmet in high school in Sweden. And
natural science,
natural sciences and technology. And after that, I did 1 year at an engineer's program, electronics engineering, But I quit that because I was really tired of school, and I decided to become a sea captain instead. So I went to sea and worked for a couple of years, and got into the Master Mariners program here in Gothenburg. And after I'd done that, I got a job on a tall ship, big sailing ship, because like sailing old classical boats was my biggest hobby at the time. So I did that for 8 years. I was one of the officers sailing around with a classes of high school students in sailing around the world and seeing lots of different places and different political systems and such things. And of course, sailing across the Atlantic and stuff like this, you get a lot of spare time, a lot of free time to read books and think a lot. And I wrote a lot of music during the time, and I've always been a creative guy. So I've written songs and made little drawings and tried to do different creative things. And after this part of my life, and I started working at the CTVs and later on onshore and in an office and everything, and trying to get a proper career going. Now that I have a family and everything, I couldn't really do music anymore because there was no time for it. So I needed another creative outlet, so to speak. So I started writing first articles and then these books, and they've been doing very much better than I ever predicted they will. So I made a little name for myself in the Bitcoin community, and I'm really happy about that. And I'll see if it's like if I can make a living out of doing just this now. So excited for the future.
Yeah. So when you saw that, you said you were looking at different political systems around the world, and on that ship crossing the Atlantic. What was the thought process? What were you thinking? Which country has the best political system?
Like I saw so many similarities between the bureaucracy in Cuba and the bureaucracy in the US, for instance.
That's interesting.
Just sort of a surprise, and like also. I noticed how biased the Swedes on board, all the teachers and all the other crew members, how biased their views of other political systems were, and how they compared everything to the Swedish system, and how the Swedish political system, like Swedes always seem to confuse what's behind the good things about the Swedish system, and like they credit the wrong aspects of it, I believe. And I always found money to be interesting, and how it worked, and why it worked, and why a $50 bill and a $10 bill could be valued so differently, even though they were practically the same thing, just a piece of paper with a number on it. And but it wasn't until I found Bitcoin, and like well, actually a couple of years before that, with some internet conspiratory movies such as Zeitgeist, and
I saw that one as well.
Stuff like that, like that had a ridiculous conclusions, but described the problem quite accurately. That the current monetary system is really just that's the pyramid scheme that we're living in. Like it's really bizarre that people think about inflation as a natural phenomenon when it's very unnatural and just a big Ponzi scheme. So that got me curious about Bitcoin, because I grew up with the Commodore 64 and like saw the evolution in computers growing up, and I was fascinated from the start by the fact that you could copy anything infinitely. And when I heard about something that couldn't be copied on the internet, that intrigued me. So I was I tried to learn more about it, and I enrolled in an online course and everything, and got good results from that and started writing about it and started meeting all these intelligent people from all across the globe, and now it feels like I have a front row seat to the future. So it's been a bizarre couple of years.
What was the year you heard about blockchain and Bitcoin?
Around 2013, 2014 maybe.
Okay.
I think that's when I first heard about it, but I didn't enroll in this course until 2016.
Okay.
Well, anyway, I prefer the term the blockchain rather than a blockchain, or blockchains in plural. That doesn't really make sense to me, because to me, Bitcoin is a discovery, the discovery of resistance to replicability, and all the attempts at making copies of it, or like making another blockchain or another attempt at this, it's just futile to me, or counterproductive. Yeah.
Okay.
You can ask me more about that if you want to.
Yeah. Let's dig into that. But first, we were talking about before the gold standard that 1971 Nixon went off the gold standard, and 73, no, 71?
71.
71, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what implication do you think this has had on the world? And maybe explain a little bit what happened with the monetary system at that time.
Yeah, what he did, he removed the, before 1971, you could convert a dollar bill into a specific amount of gold. And after 71, you couldn't do that anymore. So the value of the dollar was just backed by the good word of the government, so to speak. Excuse me. And there's a very good website called WTFhappenedin1971.com, in which you can see some graphs and some statistics about what this has done to the world. I mean, there's something called the Cantillon effect going on, which a term coined by an economists on Ireland in like the 16th century or something, called Richard Cantillon, who noticed that the closer you were to the monetary spigot, that from the spigot from the money printer, the closer you were to the money printer, and the closer connected you were to the ones who got the money first, the more you benefited from money printing. Since the US has the world's reserve currency, the petrodollar, when they print money, they benefit the most. So that's why the US has such a head start on everyone else, and why their economy is so big in comparison to everyone else's, because what they've basically been able to do is like print pieces of paper and trade it for real resources with other countries since 1971, and nothing has been stopping them from doing that. And we're living in a death spiral where there's a money printing race between the big monies of the world, like the Chinese yuan and the euro and the dollar, racing towards the bottom. Something like 20% of all dollars created were created last year, which is, to me, is just a mind-blowing figure, and it feels really strange. But most people don't see money as having a value in itself. But money, we use it as a measuring stick, but it's not really a measuring stick. It's just another good or commodity, which also has a value in itself. And the more of it there is in circulation, the higher the prices of everything else. The cheaper the money that we use is to produce, the higher the prices of everything else, and vice versa. So if the money we use is very expensive or hard to produce,
expensive to produce, then the value, the prices of everything else goes down in comparison to that. And that's why Bitcoin is so powerful, because over time it has risen, its value has risen by something like 200% a year for the last 12 years, and it seems to be doing the same, even though it has its ups and downs, and it's volatile, which is a strange term too, since price stability is the artificial thing here, and not volatility is like sort of a natural state, since value is a subjective thing, and price stability is really an artificial thing. Yeah.
How much would you say the actual inflation is 2020, 2021?
Above 15%.
15%. So if you didn't get
because if you look at like the stock market and the housing market, it's just going up and up and up and up at a faster and faster rate every year, right? Even though the entire world has been in a lockdown for the last year. So the actual economies have been slowing down really, and that should really be reflected in the markets. But it isn't, because of these artificially cheap loans, because of the money printing going on everywhere, and like negative interest rates and stuff like that. So
that means basically anyone who is working and is not getting a 15% increase in salary is getting poorer.
Exactly.
So if you have assets that gives a good return, yes, but for the most people around the world, actually getting poorer and poorer because of this.
Yeah, but you need really good assets as well. Not very many assets go up by a median of 15% per year. It's kind of hard to find, and I don't even know if 15% is enough. If you look at housing prices in Sweden, it certainly looks as 15% is a bit low. I mean, so it's weird to think about it actually, because and it takes a while for like the inflation for basic goods like groceries and stuff to kick in. That takes a while. So I think people are in for a bit of a shock here in a year or so when prices will really get weird.
Yeah. So let's talk about Bitcoin now. Some people compare it to digital gold, and some people are talking about how this will change the world. And I think you belong to the later. And Jack Dorsey from Twitter, he said in the conference in Miami just like a month ago, Bitcoin changes absolutely everything. I don't think there's anything more important in my lifetime to work on. Jack Dorsey Twitter. I think you agree with him. And why is that? How can Bitcoin change the world, and how can Bitcoin change everything?
Because it's the best monetary good that humanity has ever seen. If you compare it to gold, which is sort of insulting to Bitcoin, gold worked for such a long time as a money because of its relative high stock in comparison of the flow of new gold. So it has always been quite expensive to extract new gold from the ground. Because you need a lot of heavy machinery and stuff to dig it out of the ground. It's hard to find new gold, so it's expensive to produce new gold. And what happens then is, like, when the price of gold goes up, it becomes more profitable to mine for gold. So more gold miners come online as the price goes up, but they don't find that much more gold because there's not that much more gold to find, or like depending on how much money you put into the industry. But a price fluctuation in gold does not affect the flow of gold that much. Make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what makes gold's price so stable over time, because it evens out very quickly. In other assets that are more like, if the price of copper goes up, it becomes a lot more profitable to find copper, and people find lots more copper, and then the price goes down again. So it's not as good as a monetary good over time. But gold has worked as a monetary good for like 5,000 years. And if you price like a cow in gold, it costs about the same today as it did 5,000 years ago, which I find kind of fascinating. It's been like the effectiveness of finding new gold has been on par with the effectiveness of producing everything else. So prices have been relatively stable in gold terms for the last 5,000 years. With Bitcoin, it's a little different, because regardless of how many people try to find new Bitcoins and how many new miners that come online, the network recalibrates itself about every 2 weeks. So if more miners come online, it becomes increasingly difficult to find new Bitcoins. And it does this in such a way that the issuance schedule is very precise. So you know exactly how many Bitcoins there will be at a certain point in the future, or not exactly, but a fairly exact prediction of how many Bitcoins there will be in the future.
So this is built into the code then? This
is built into the code. Like the first 4 years, the reward to the miners for each block, which is 10 minutes apart. Every block is 10 minutes apart on average. That gave them 50 Bitcoin. And the 4 years after that 25 Bitcoin, the 4 years after that, 12.5 Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. So right now it takes about 1.5 minutes to find a new Bitcoin, regardless of how many miners try to do it at the same time. And it's this difficulty adjustment algorithm that's so fascinating, because it makes it nearly infinitely expensive to produce more than 21 million Bitcoins ever. Because in order to do that, you would need to bribe everyone in it to change the network against their own self-interest, because no one wants to change the network, because it's this robustness that gives it its immense value. So no one in Bitcoin wants to ever change this issuance schedule, because it would destroy the entire value proposition to do so. So the incentives are so perfectly lined up for this for this to just increase in price and in purchasing power over time indefinitely. And once you see this, you see that like it's just a matter of time until other people will realize this as well. And it's just a matter of time until nation states will realize it, and big organizations and corporations. And like now we have mega corporations and nation states on board, right? Like MicroStrategy and El Salvador, which is like the first country to officially accept Bitcoin and keep Bitcoin on their nation's balance sheet.
Yeah, so for the people that are not into the Bitcoin space, there was some big announcements in the Miami Bitcoin conference, and one of those was that El Salvador is now Can you explain what El Salvador decided to do with Bitcoin?
Yeah, they have 2 official currencies right now, and it's the US dollar and Bitcoin. Well, the bill passed in the Congress, but it takes another couple of months before it's actually implemented in the country. But the people of El Salvador will be able to use Bitcoin tax-free and wherever they want, and stores in and service providers in El Salvador are required by law to accept Bitcoin, which is just fascinating because and there's a big volcano which has a geothermal plant next to it, operated by the Salvadorian state, which will be used to mine Bitcoin with. So El Salvador will have newly mined Bitcoins on their balance sheet. Yeah. And what happens after this is that a prisoner's dilemma type game theory type game will start to play out between nation states, because the sooner you hop on board to this train, the more you will benefit from it. So within the next 10 years, I believe we'll see this prisoner's dilemma type game play out between nation states, in which they try to front run each other and like leapfrog the other countries by hopping on board to the train first.
So IMF was not so happy about this, huh?
No, IMF was of course not very happy about it, because they're like the opposite of Bitcoin. They're like, you, you have the empire and the rebels, like in Star Wars, right? So the big evil empire of the IMF, they of course want central banking to continue and stuff to just continue along. I mean, the system we live under now, with all these, when every nation state on earth needs needs to be indebted, and every person needs a mortgage on their house, and cheap loans everywhere, and money printers going at the same time. It's a very destructive thing, and it is the very mechanism that makes us destroy the planet. Over consumerism everywhere, and like the production misallocation of resources everywhere, because we don't let a sound money free market society exist because of this artificial money printing instead. And this is why we have environmental problems. This is why we have poverty. This is why we have all the bad things in the world, really. Yeah. And Bitcoin fixes all of this if we just let it.
me and my good friend, he's still in Dubai, and we have this joke on WhatsApp that whenever we see a problem, we just reply, Bitcoin fixes this, like everything. So yeah, what does Bitcoin fix as per Knut?
It really does fix everything. Yeah, or at least it is the most natural path forward, because when you have a monetary good that is completely separated from human intervention, that means that all transactions made in Bitcoin are voluntary transactions, and the entire system is voluntary. You don't need to use it if you don't want to, which is not the case with fiat money. You need to use fiat money to pay your taxes, for instance. Otherwise, some people will violently throw you in jail if you don't. But Bitcoin is completely voluntary, and voluntary transaction is, to me, that is civilization. Like you and me, right now, we're engaged in a transaction. We're transacting words and thoughts with each other, and we do it because we both feel that we have something to benefit from talking to the other person, right? So you find it valuable to talk to me. I find it valuable to talk to you. So we're engaged in barter as we speak. Every human interaction is a form of trade. Whenever we interact with each other, we trade. So either we find it beneficial to listen to the other person, or we find it beneficial to say something to the other person, or oftentimes both. But everything we do voluntarily with each other is a trade of some kind. So this is at the very basics of everything, and it's the very first principles things. And the ethos of Bitcoin is completely aligned with these thoughts, and there's nothing involuntary about it, which cannot be said for normal currencies, which have their value diluted all the time through the inflation mechanism.
Doesn't to play devil's advocate, doesn't the inflation kind of push people to add more value? We're having a conversation, but we're doing it over Zoom, and Zoom made a lot of money last year because of the pandemic, but they added more value. And isn't that kind of part of the built into the inflation system?
No, but the theory that all the central bankers all central banking is built upon is is called Keynesianism. It is based on the ideas of John Maynard Keynes, who said that what we need is the velocity of money. We need transactions to happen often, because every time there's a transaction, it's good for the economy, right? If I use this $100 bill and you use it again and you use it again, it's good for the overall economy. But this is only partially true. And what he misses in his arguments is that consumption for consumption's sake is not good for the economy. If I buy something that is just a consumer good that I will that I could have lived without, and that is just wasteful, that's not really good for the overall economy. What's good is investment. So every time a $100 bill is used to buy something that can actually provide value for me over a long period of time, or like accumulate value for me, or produce something for me, or help something forward, that's the only transactions that matter. And Ludwig von Mises understood this in the 50s, and other economists of the Austrian school have written a lot about this, like Friedrich Hayek, for instance, and Murray Rothbard. That the only transactions that really matter to get the economy forward in a real sense are investments of capital goods and not of consumer goods. This is what the inflationists got wrong, and they're like, and like I said, this is why we have environmental problems, because people are incentivized to spend instead of to save up. Like in the good old days, back when you had the gold standard, you had to accumulate capital first and then make the investment. Nowadays, you take out a big loan and you make the investment having to pay back a loan from day one, and you don't even know if the business works yet. Back on a gold standard or on a Bitcoin standard, you will have to accumulate capital first, and if it doesn't work, you waste the capital and then you're back to zero again. So like there's an incentive to save rather than to spend in Bitcoin that simply does not exist in fiat.
Okay, so last year the more and more dollar was printed, so high inflation, and with the Bitcoin mining process that you described, it's the opposite. It's deflation. It becomes harder and harder. Correct?
Yeah. It's not deflationary in that sense, because like it's a de-accelerating inflationary curve.
Okay.
So Bitcoin still has an inflation, but it's a predictable inflation, and it's de-accelerating. Approaching zero around the year 2140.
Yeah. How many Bitcoins are out now?
Around 18,500,000 something, I believe. 19 million, something like that.
Yeah.
I believe closer to 19 million. I haven't checked it for a while.
Okay.
It's not something I remember.
Yeah.
On top of my head.
Yeah.
So most of them are out there. That's the important part. Most Bitcoins are already out there. So it gets more and more expensive to produce new ones.
Yeah, which means that the value goes up, because the more people that get into Bitcoin, the more the value goes up.
It's a way of converting electrical energy to monetary energy. So it's really just converting between two energy states.
Yeah.
So it's where the objective reality of mathematics and physics meets the subjective reality of praxeology, which is the great missing school subject. Praxeology is to the subjective what mathematics is to the objective.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the world would adopt a Bitcoin standard, what do you think would happen?
Yeah, well, it's very hard to say. It's very hard to predict the future. The thing is, we're facing an economic crisis of epic proportions at some point in the future. Nobody knows when, but we are facing that regardless of whether we have Bitcoin or not. And the thing Bitcoin can do in that situation is that it can provide a parallel system and a better system, and it can easen the blow. It will make the inevitable crash a little easier to bear for people that have Bitcoin. even for people who don't, actually, because there will be parts of the economy that will be actually working. So Bitcoin is good for for everyone, including those that don't own any Bitcoin. And this is a hard part to wrap your head around, because you think you would only get left out, but that's not the point, because these better investments and this the reduction of misallocated resources benefits everyone on Earth. It really does. So, but of course, the more Bitcoin you have, the better off you will be in an economic crisis and in a hyper Bitcoinization situation.
Because I mean, now we see big gaps between those who have and those who don't have. But if the Bitcoin goes up to, you know, like extremely high valuation, then there are some Bitcoiners that are suddenly maybe the richest people in the world. Isn't it just that we still have those who have and those who don't have?
Yes, but what,
the Winklevoss twins will be the richest in the world.
Yeah, but what's missing from that argument is, like, what is the mechanism right now that makes this gap happen? Like, what is the underlying mechanism that makes the 1% so much richer than everyone else? It is the money printing, because all these big companies, they benefit from the money printing first. Like, remember the Cantillon effect. So like companies like Tesla and Amazon and Google and Facebook and so on, they benefit enormously from new dollars being printed, because they're the ones closest to the money spigot. And everyone else on the bottom pays for it, because they lose purchasing power because their dollars decrease in value. But as you say, as Bitcoin's value goes up, of course, the OG Bitcoin holders, like the Winklevoss twins and whatever, or Winklevi twins, however the plural form of that. They will become extremely rich, but not at the expense of anyone else, because economics isn't a zero-sum game. We think it is because we have fiat monetary systems, which artificially increases the prices of everything all the time. Okay. But economics, a global free market is not a zero-sum game. It's the prices of everything becoming more effective everywhere, and transportation becoming more effective, production becoming more effective. That's beneficial to everyone. If everything is cheaper to produce and cheaper to ship around the world, everyone benefits from that. So on a Bitcoin standard, everyone's standard would improve. In a way it doesn't under the fiat monetary system, because right now we're paying for the big gap. So like, well, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. If you accumulate one Bitcoin now, you will have 1/21 millionth of all Bitcoins that will ever exist. And the Winklevoss twins will have maybe they have like 10,000 Bitcoins. I don't really know how many they have, but they will be 10,000 times richer than you are forever, theoretically. But they will not, the gap will not increase. And right now, it is increasing between you and the Winklevoss twins, because they get richer off of fiat exponentially. So the gap is increasing there, but in Bitcoin terms, it wouldn't be increasing. It would stay the same. Of course, there's no like redistribution scheme in this or anything like that, but it doesn't really matter, because relative income or relative wealth is a non-issue. What you should be thinking about is, how is my purchasing power today compared to yesterday? That's the only thing that should matter to you. What anyone else makes is completely arbitrary. Anyway, that's how I view it.
Yeah, but in the fiat system, you need to show your status symbols. You need to consume the latest brands.
Yeah, and in Bitcoin you don't, which Peter McCormack showed very elegantly with the president of El Salvador sitting there with a Metallica T-shirt and some
so for
torn up jeans.
So for the listeners that are not into Bitcoin, the one Bitcoin guy, he had a meeting with the president of El Salvador, showed up in a nice Metallica T-shirt.
Anyway, it's in that sense, I think it's a great equalizer, because if we were all under the same system and no one could manipulate that system, or no one could like benefit from cheating anyone, it's a much fairer game. So.
And also to clarify for the listeners, if you're not into Bitcoin, the Winklevoss twins are the guys that were in the Social Dilemma, was it? With the ones that kind of founded Facebook, but
no, Social Network. Social Dilemma was
a Social Dilemma
documentary, right?
Yeah, the Social Network. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that asked Mark Zuckerberg to code their social media site, and then created Facebook instead. So they are back, and they are really into Bitcoin, and big time into Bitcoin. Hyper Bitcoinization. How would you explain that to someone that not into Bitcoin?
I often describe it as the opposite of hyperinflation, because hyper Bitcoinization is where there's a mass realization that this system is far superior to the one we're using now, and that's practically overnight everyone hops on board to Bitcoin and starts using Bitcoin instead of whatever they're using now. And you remember when the smartphone happened, for instance, it seemed like overnight, right? One day there were no smartphones, and the other day, a couple of weeks later, everyone had a smartphone. And same thing with like Facebook or Pokemon Go or whatever. Network technologies tend to like nothing happens at first, and then everything happens at once, and then everyone's on board the network. And this might very well still happen to Bitcoin, like that the entire world population realizes that this thing is so much more valuable to me than regular money. So I better get all in as soon as possible.
When do you think it will happen?
I think it's happening right now.
Just a short story. I was in Åre skiing in February, and we were sitting on the gondola up, and then suddenly Elon Musk is tweeting about Bitcoin, and each time I take a run in the ski slope, the Bitcoin has gone up in price quite a lot.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, and we've seen these price cycles in Bitcoin, like every 3 years or every 4 years, the price of Bitcoin like 10-fold or 20-fold, like goes up really fast, and then it crashes to like 50% of that, and then it stays dormant for a couple of years, and it does this thing over and over again. But I believe there's a last such cycle somewhere where the price can't go down anymore, because there's not enough new Bitcoins on the market, and the demand is too high, so the price has nowhere to go but up. If I try to visualize it like if you have a stairway to heaven, and it's only that much, it's only 50 Bitcoins wide. The first 4 years, a lot of people can come walking up this stairway to heaven, like 50 people on each step of the stairway. And then 4 years after that, it's only 25 Bitcoins wide, and only 25 people. There's only room for 25 people in each step. And 4 years after that, it's only 12 and a half Bitcoins wide. So at some point, there will be so many people trying to get on the stairway to heaven, so that, and like, of course, the guy on top can still run a couple of stairs higher, so that the price goes higher, but then he can sell again and run back the stairs. But there's always a floor somewhere where people refuse to sell. So you try to fit all these people in on this stairway to heaven that is Bitcoin, and there's always a floor somewhere. So it can always drop, but there's always a point where it can't drop any further. And that point is getting higher and higher all the time.
Yeah, because the people that have been into this for a long time, they never sell, right? They just hold.
Yeah, yeah.
Hodler,
They call the hodlers of last resort,
Mhm.
as opposed to lender of last resort, which
Yeah.
is the central bank. But a hodler of last resort is a person who accumulates more Bitcoin over time, but refuses to sell their Bitcoins ever.
Mm.
And there are more and more people are doing this all the time. And there's something called dollar cost averaging, which is getting more and more popular across the globe, where you like set aside a couple of dollars every month to buy Bitcoin, and you just keep on doing that. And like the thing you can do as a person to increase the price, the value of your Bitcoin, is to never sell them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the trick, and it's working. So far, it's working. The interesting metric to look at is the lowest point of the price curve every year, not the all-time highs, but the lows. And they have been going up consistently since day one.
Okay. So I think in March I bought 200 euros of stock in Investor, 200 euros of Bitcoin, and 200 euros of Ethereum.
All right.
2030, what do you think the value of this will be?
I think Ethereum won't exist.
Okay, I need to sell that one. No, I'm going to keep it for the experiment.
Yeah, because I think it's a scam. The Ethereum blockchain is so big, so that it's impossible for a normal user of Ethereum to run their own full node, and it has been impossible for quite some time. Which means that it's centrally controlled, and which means that the monetary policy can be changed at any time. There's no way to audit how much ether is out there. There's no way to audit. There's no way to stop them from changing the protocol and so on and so forth. It doesn't have the robustness of Bitcoin,
which is completely opposite of Bitcoin, which is completely decentralized.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole point is that anyone can run a full node at home, and it shouldn't be expensive to do so. I mean, the poorest people in the world can still afford a Raspberry Pi and an internet connection and run their own full node. Yeah. You need a Raspberry Pi computer and a hard drive.
Okay. So if Ethereum is out, then so Bitcoin or Investor, which one is worth the most of my investments? 2030.
Worth denominated in what? US dollars or Swedish kronas?
Cows. Yeah.
In cows, okay.
What is a good way to? Because
cows is a good metric.
Yeah. No, but I've been thinking about this. Before the economists used to have this Big Mac index, so you could see the price of Big Mac around the world. Yeah. And Bitcoin should have something like this as well. Like over the years, like something that you can. Yeah. Because if you cannot compare it with dollar, what can we compare it with?
Yeah. Well, you can always measure the purchasing power in something else. So what you're asking me is like, in 2030, Ethereum doesn't exist. Investor could have made a ton of money in the stock market up until the year 2030 if they can keep the fiat monetary system alive for 10 more years. That could possibly be very, 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 very valuable in fiat terms. But I still think that Bitcoin will outperform it because all these stocks, like the S&P 500 or whatever is the index would have to average above 15-20% per year and rising every year. Because like the money, the central banking requires the money printing to go faster and faster every year. So inflation will go up. So even though the stock market seems to be doing well, it's really just the money getting its value diluted.
So maybe like 1 liter of milk would be a good way to compare it with it.
Yeah. But this is 10 years. And what you should ask yourself is like Bitcoin, Ethereum, investor stocks, and gold, which will keep their value over time for 500 years. And is there somewhere safe to keep them is there a city which can't be raided where I can keep these for 500 years? And Bitcoin is the only one that can potentially do that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. As of today, the Ethereum has the highest value in fiat today, like because I bought when Bitcoin I think was 55,000 or something like that.
Yeah, compared to when you bought.
Yeah.
I would sell them immediately and convert them into Bitcoin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
me and two friends, we did a price prediction for September, 1st of September 2021 for Bitcoin value in fiat. And this was like maybe 2 months ago, we set this price prediction. And my friends are not like my one friend, he said, I think one Bitcoin will be $40,000. I said $98,000. And Greg, another friend, said $288,000.
When is this?
1st September 2021. And we said this was like maybe 1 or 2 months ago when we said this. So I think my friend that said 288 is a little bit more skeptical now. But what do you think? The price prediction for September 2021?
It's very hard to say.
Yeah.
It's very hard to say. I think it can be anything between like, what is it now? Like $37,500.
Yeah.
If you look at the price chart there, it might be anything between $20,000 and $400,000 is plausible in my book.
But as a hodler, it doesn't matter because you're keeping it for 500 years, basically.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. No, and at a certain point, you can, like, say, even if you started to live off of some of your Bitcoin, at a certain point, you could do that forever also. Like, because if you, like me, believe that the price will go up indefinitely and there's no end point to this. And the thing is, the funny thing is, I don't think there's an end point even when all the fiat currencies die. Even though when it becomes pointless to count Bitcoin in US dollars anymore, I don't think that's the end point either, because then you have a free money, a sound money free market, global free market, in which everything is much more well-oiled and works much better, and the costs of everything drops even faster. So at that point, the purchasing power of Bitcoin will go up even faster than now, which I think is just a mind-blowing thought.
Interesting.
Everything there is divided by 21 million. That's and everything that ever will be. So that's a point where it gets weird.
Yeah, you have so Knut has done a couple of videos on YouTube that I recommend you to watch. We'll put them in the show note to this episode, and one is called everything into 21 million. Is it
everything divided by 21 million?
Yeah. Thing that we're coming to the end of the show, but one thing that I struggle with myself is finding the correct information. So same thing like you, I watched Zeitgeist, I don't know when it was, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I listened to another interview with you, and you said that you don't believe in conspiracies. And when you dig into these things, it's really hard to find what's true and what is not. For example, there is this conspiracy that Rothschild owns all the central banks, and the Federal Reserve is a private bank. When I've been trying to find out, is the Swedish central bank private or state-owned? So it's very hard to find the right information. So how do you go about to find the right information and don't get sucked into the conspiracy rabbit hole?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I got into a fight with Peter Joseph a couple of months back on Twitter, by the way, the creator of the Zeitgeist movies.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Because he's still sort of a communist. But anyway, I think just as important as where to find the right information is like what information are you looking for? So like on the Federal Reserve, I can really recommend a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is about the history of the Federal Reserve.
I have heard interviews from the author, but I haven't read the book.
It's a very interesting book, and it's quite depressing.
Yeah.
But all books on central banks that are truthful are sort of depressing. But I would say do you really need to know who's behind everything? Like, if you know the mechanics of a central bank, and you know that they are in charge of issuing new money, that should be enough. Like, why should anyone be in charge of issuing new money? Why should anyone be able to issue new money? If you had a money that was perfectly divisible, you would never need to issue anything else. Like, you could have a money that's that like Bitcoin, 21 million is just an arbitrary number. It could just as easily have been one, and that could have been divisible in as many parts as Bitcoin can, and that would have worked just as well. The number is not important. The important part is that it can't be diluted. It can't be manipulated. So I don't really need to. I don't need to know who owns the central bank. I don't need to believe in a conspiracy theory that this happened there and there's political play there and blah, blah, blah. And who influenced Nixon to get off the gold standard, and was it really necessary? Like, I don't really need to know all that stuff. All I need to know is, like, these currencies are inflationary, and this is the only one that is not. And how do I know that it's not inflationary? Well, I can look it up myself. I can verify that everything that happened the way it was supposed to happen. And I can follow in real time how this plays out. Like in 2017, when the Bitcoin Cash fork happened, for instance, I lived through that and I saw it happen firsthand. And I wrote an article to people about how to take control of their own private keys, so that they could immediately sell all the Bitcoin Cash and get Bitcoins for them when it happened. And in hindsight, that was the right thing to do, because of course Bitcoin Cash plummeted in price in comparison to Bitcoin after that. And you know why, if you understand the invention, and if you understand the importance of realizing that this is a discovery and not an invention. Like, this is the discovery of absolute scarcity, absolute finite amounts on the internet. You cannot replicate that. This is the one shot. This is the shot we have.
That makes total sense, and actually it's a good way of looking at it, and just understanding that it doesn't matter how it is, the system as it is now. This is a better system, and we should try to adopt it, basically. No?
Yeah, and study Bitcoin. Study all the information about Bitcoin is free and available. There's a good site called bitcoinresources.com. There's another good site called bitcoinonly.com. There's MicroStrategy's site, hope.com. It's very good, and I'm proud to say that my book is on there, but so I'm a bit biased. But Stefan Livera has a beginner's course via hope.com, the MicroStrategy's site, for learning about it. And but most importantly, the Bitcoin source code is open source, so everyone on earth can learn how to program and read that code and understand the mathematics of it. Like, mathematics is open source. Everyone is, this is just information, and it's just free speech and mathematics, and it's accessible to everyone on earth. And
the white paper
couldn't be better.
Facts and math. There's no conspiracy in the white paper there.
No, and the white paper is important, but it's important to remember that the white paper is like a blueprint of what was to be. But Bitcoin is different than the white paper now, and a lot of people use the white paper as an argument for this and that, and this should be more like this and more like that. Doesn't matter to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is what it is, and you can all read the code. You can copy the code. You can change the code if you want. It's pointless to do that, but you can. It's verifiable, and that's the beauty of it.
Okay.
What was it? A Bitcoin has an unforgeable costliness to it, and which means that it's very easy to verify that it's real, but it's very hard to forge. And you could say that for gold as well, but gold is sort of hard to verify. You need to be a qualified chemist to see if if the gold in your hand is actual real gold. It's not that easy to verify. Bitcoin is very easy to verify. You just run the hashing algorithm in reverse, and you see that it's a valid block in there.
Yeah, and when you move to Spain, you can easily bring your Bitcoins. You don't have to like put your gold in a security thing and like...
Yeah, I could if I hadn't lost them all in a tragic boating accident a couple of years back. Then I could bring all my Bitcoins to Spain, but I don't have any Bitcoins. I lost them all.
Yeah.
In a very tragic boating accident. You know, I've been involved with a lot of boats and stuff.
Yeah,
so.
okay. Yeah. Let's leave it at that. So two last questions. What year do you think Sweden will adopt Bitcoin as same as El Salvador? Will it ever happen?
Not for a long time. But then again, let me answer that with a counter question. What do you think has the most longevity, Bitcoin or Sweden?
Bitcoin.
And like, what about the EU, the US, and the British pound?
Bitcoin
the UK or the EU, which will survive the longest?
I mean, Bitcoin.
I don't know.
So as I understand it, as long as there's internet, there's Bitcoin.
Yeah, there doesn't even have to be internet.
So I normally end with this magic wand question, that if you could teach something to everyone in the world, but I wanted to give you a magic wand and you could change the system in any way you wanted. How would you use this magic wand at this point in time? If you had a magic wand and you could change the system around the world, how would you change it?
That's a very good question. Like, I think the systems are in themselves are like cancers, like they grow and they become more and more of a burden on the society they're applied to. So I think and the bureaucracy is always expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy everywhere. So I think the thing to focus on is give people the tools they need in order to emancipate themselves and in order to become more self-sovereign. Like, you don't need to read mainstream media news and watch mainstream media channels. You can educate yourself by listening to your pod here, Oscar, or whatever. There are so many options out there of what information you choose to take in. So focus on the tools for self-sovereignty and emancipation. Bitcoin is an excellent tool, and it's available for anyone who wants to use it. You can use it in whatever way you like. You're not forced to learn this and that much about it. Of course, you're self-responsible for. You yourself is responsible for securing them and everything, but there's no one is forcing you to do that in this or that manner. You can have a gazillion Bitcoins on your phone if you choose to. So like, I don't believe change should come from above and trickle down in society. I think it's the other way around. Change should start with the individual and like move upwards across the hierarchies. And I think that's what Bitcoin is doing. So, but what would I do if I could change anything? I would probably embed another layer of privacy in the internet's base layer somewhere, so it was harder for anyone to track anyone else, or like face recognition algorithms and these things. I think privacy is an important thing, and it's people give it up too easily.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's sad. It's spreading around the world, the face recognition cameras and everything. That's another discussion.
Yeah.
I think Bitcoin fixes that.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Knut. It's really interesting to talk to you. Yeah, I wish you all the best with your move to Spain, and hope to see you somewhere in the world on a Bitcoin conference.
Yeah, same to you, Oscar. Nice talking to you, and
Yeah.
thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.